One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Nan Carney-DeBord. Nan is currently the Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at Denison University. Greetings, Nan. Thanks for joining us.
Ty, it's great. It's my pleasure.
Now, Nan, you've been in your current leadership role for 8 years there, and you spent roughly 35 years in college athletics. So you've seen a lot of leadership, and you have, I'd imagine, a healthy understanding of what it takes to be successful in any organization, athletics included. Since you've been there, you made a huge emphasis on culture during your tenure as an AD. How has that emphasis come to, I will say, a tangible type fruition over the last 8 years?
Well, I think the intentionality and the focus of actually developing and encouraging culture in a positive fashion has been most important. So we've established the cultural foundation of the department with a concerted effort to identify our values and match our behaviors. So we've really focused on hiring the right people and developing the personnel that we have in place. So from the space of the time of hiring, we talk about hiring, if we're hiring coaches, as being mentors first, coaches second. And then internally, we have focused on providing exceptional mentorship. I mean, we have incredible coaches in place, such as Sarah Lee, Bob Galoni, Greg Perini, Mike Caravana, who have coached for a long time at Denison. So we have in-place mentors that have been really, really strong. We also have provided some outside vetted individuals to help us in this culture work as a department. But then what's most important and of primary concern is our student-athlete experience. So the student-athlete, what is actually happening? If you look at Denison externally, you say, well, we're experiencing lots of successes or different successes. And we have. It has a rich athletic tradition and heritage of success. So, but the team culture of many programs have really been enhanced and gotten stronger in the last 8 years, and from some of this intentional work. We're performing in the classroom as student athletes. We're contributing positively to the culture of the entire university, and we're winning. But athletes can do more. Some of the research we've done in our North Coast Athletic Conference is suggesting that our athletes may not be performing academically at a higher rate than our students, our regular student bodies. So how can we help them? Because we know they're really talented. So that's a little bit of our intentionality through our development through sport initiative.
Right, what you've been doing. And I'll ask you about that shortly. With culture being such an emphasis, right? Individual teams, within individual groups within athletics, on campus, how would you, someone who's been around athletics for as long as you've been in terms of coaching, in terms of being an athletic director, how would you define culture, right? Because imagine some of the things we're going to talk about here have to start with your definition of culture so that you can implement what you wanted to implement.
Well, because of my longevity in higher ed athletics, and specifically in the Division III, I had the opportunity in my previous institution to teach and develop leadership courses. So I would say that this is culture developed through leadership and mentorship and character education. And so you see it in performance, and you see it when individuals, both coaches and student athletes and department members, reach their performance potential, whatever that might be within the specific job. It could be the equipment manager of our institution, reorganizing a whole system of change, or hiring of our student work studies individuals. So I think it's about developing leadership competencies and matching the behavior accordingly. So I think years of study and years of actually teaching within the liberal arts, and now recently really doing a deep dive into some cutting edge research in emotional intelligence
and that's what
and otherwise.
That's where I want to get into.
Yep.
You obviously you had your definition from your background. You spent the 8 years, well, however much time it took for you to do an assessment of what was going on there. Of course, this is your alma mater, right?
It's my alma mater. It's personal.
Yeah, right, exactly, to do the assessment. And now you've come to a point where you're ready to implement a special program, special institute, I guess, where it ties in a lot of the things you just mentioned. Can you give us some insight on that? Tell us what it is and why it's important.
Well, I once again, it's the intentionality and the understanding that, we want to do things differently. We don't want to leave behavior and values by chance. And most importantly, the leaders within the department want to do this and understand the importance of culture. So we sort of have a four-pronged focus. One is athletic team culture. One is individual student-athlete development. One is coaching development. And our first phase, our assistant coach mentorship program, occurred about 5 years ago. So that's 5 years deep. And we keep developing and keep changing. And then the fourth prong is professional development. How can you grow? Achieving a growth mindset. But from day one, as you said, the initial assessment, we had to figure out what it was that we valued. So we came up with what it was we value, and growth mindset is a key component to our department.
And those four things apply to the staff, your assistants, apply to coaches, to student athletes, everybody involved in the program.
Anyone who touches the life of a student athlete. So that could be an administrative assistant, that could be equipment manager, our sport information directors, our athletic trainers, anyone who touches the lives of our student athletes. Because at the end of the day, we want the experience through sport to be transformational for the student athlete to go forward in whatever they choose to do.
Right. Now you mentioned that in terms of those things, the assistant coach development has started. Was that the first thing you started with? Or?
Yeah, we started very peripheral version of assistant coach mentorship, and then I had the opportunity to hire an assistant athletic director who was proficient in the area of both culture and cutting edge research, but also in assessment. So we then developed. One of my associate director of athletics used a class in sports psychology to actually look at some assessment tools. So now we have some idea of what it is our assistant coaches are learning and what competencies they are displaying, so that when they decide to take their next step professionally and that athletic director calls me, I will say, call the head coach for the X's and O's of the sport. Let me tell you what he or she does for our department and how they will serve your department as a whole. Clearly, if you're interested in he or she, they should be proficient in their sport. But also we talk about other competencies that are necessary to function and help your department grow.
Getting into emotional intelligence, to how they're perceived, how they perceive themselves.
Their self-awareness, their self-control, their empathy, and once again, how they can help someone else grow within the context of the department. So if they have expertise, they can share it.
Right, I can see where it's important to start with coaches,
yes.
Right? Seeing as that they're the ones leading the student athletes. That's a very important thing. Where do you go from there in terms of the next step?
Once again, it's an integrated initiative in that we want first and foremost to make certain that our coaches feel supported. And, you'll have good days. I give myself two choices, good and great. But so you have good days and you have great days. But on those good days, you might have just come off of a difficult loss in terms of the score of the game. So, how can I best support my coaches to let them know? Because as coaches and having coached, you're very self-critical and you want to figure out how to get better, and you're competitive about getting better, and you have that drive. So I'm just creating an atmosphere and a work environment that's structurally conducive to optimum motivation to continue to grow.
Now, being a leader, being over this process and these 4 things that you're implementing, obviously all of us like children, right? All of them are as important. Everybody's equally important to you. But is there one of them that you're specifically very passionate about in terms of how you implement this in one of the 4 priorities in this program?
I think the learning and developing through our sport experience for our student athlete. Our student athlete is number one. If I have student athletes like at this convention that are in the industry and they come back and they said, it was a transformational experience for me, and I'll say why, and I try to help them explain. And in addition, we're not interested in 4 years being the finished product. We're going to follow our students across in and out of athletics at Denison for 5 years. We have a lot of data in 5 years out, in collaboration with our Knowlton Center in career exploration, and so there's a lot of collaboration on campus, so that by the end of the day, our student athlete is not only has the skills, but is able to verbalize and demonstrate the skills they've learned through this experience.
Which is an important thing. And I know as former athletes, you want to be able to say more than I learned team cohesiveness. And
Right. Or hard work,
Yeah,
or how to sweat.
That's a definite benefit, to be able to verbalize what being a student athlete at Denison University has taught me and how I can apply it to this job that I'm interviewing for. That's very important. It's very astute of you to come up with that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think what we have in place right now is a framework to engage sport more purposefully at Denison. And, and that starts from the first year, and so I can't tell you all my secrets yet, but when this is formally rolled out, I hope we get to meet again.
Well, I guess the last question I asked specifically about that is how will you evaluate its success? Do you have assessments for each part of the implementation process? How will you evaluate it?
Yeah, the whole program isn't complete and in the books, and I think it's a developmental process. I think we will have assessment pieces for each. We're very data-driven as an institution. We're very data-driven in what it is we're trying to implement through the sport experience. So I think we will continue to grow and develop and assess. But once again, the student-athlete piece, the individual student-athlete development and how they're developing, I think will be assessed throughout the process. So it won't be just assessed at the 4 years or,
6 years.
Right. And we might have one, maybe someone gets injured in the process. We're not disregarding injured athletes or someone that takes on a different role. They might become a student assistant. We still want them to learn the skills necessary to take on with them.
Right, what they need to do. Well, man, this has been an excellent conversation. It sounds like what you're implementing there, what you have implemented there, has proven to be very beneficial for all involved there at Denison University. I really appreciate you joining us on the One Question podcast.
Thanks for your time, Ty, and thanks for all you're doing for Division III exposure and support.
That was Nan Carney-DeBord. She is the Associate Vice President and Director of Athletics at Denison University. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.